Welcome back to the channel. We're continuing on with our Ranger project here. We're going to do some more wiring and probably install some of these gauges. If you haven't done all so already, go ahead and like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification so you know when I post new content, and let me know what you think down in the comment section. So we'll get going here. So last time we did some main electrical wire, got the positive ground stuff taken care of, wired over here for the main power, and we have this bundle of electrical from the Ford Performance wiring harness. And let's see what we got here. This here is the starter signal to engage the starter. We have the alternator plug. This is I think that's the boost pressure gauge. And one last one here is the air intake box. And then we also have this gray wire, which is from our advanced or autometer tack adapter. That needs to run inside to the cab. So pretty much what this bundle wire needs to do is pretty much strip it all down to its bare, just down to the wires, get all the sheathing off it, because it's all going to run different directions. Air intake's going to be over here. The starter's going to run up and around and down. Alternator's going to go right down there, but we clearly don't need 6 foot of wire for that one. Same thing with the air box. It's going to be right here, so that's going to be another short run. This turbocharger pressure, I think it's pressure and also air intake temp. Anyway, after the turbocharger. Anyway, that one we'll just leave hanging out, because until we get our intercooler and radiator set up, we really don't know where that's going to be. It's probably going to be someplace over in here, because I think on the factory it was between the intercooler and the throttle body, so that's going to be right in here someplace. We could probably get it roughed in over here, but we probably won't cut anything or shorten anything. Hopefully we have plenty of length. But anyway, yeah, we'll put this on a time lapse probably and get to stripping that down. All right, so we got this bundle of wire here consolidated. Kind of fell down here, but we shortened up the alternator wire here to just the protective sheath that was on it. That whole probably 6 feet got chopped off, and then sawed the wires back on there. Pretty easy when you just match color to color. Rolled up the extra turbocharger pressure, and also intake airbox temperature, because I know the intake is going to be right here, but until I really know exactly where the fitting is going to be, I'm not going to cut this short. And the same thing for this. I could have routed it along the front. Right now it's safe right there. What I did do is routed the tack adapter wire and the starting wire together underneath here, and I'll have to probably put an extra length of wire on here to run into the dash, but it's a little hard to see. But the starting wire is run down there and hooked up to the starter, so everything to crank over the engine is hooked up. So if we wanted to, we could hook up a good battery, because this one's dead, and crank it over, but we're not there yet. Anyway, so that really take care of that, and I really know what's going on now. So now we just got 2 plugs left to worry about there. We're going to jump over into doing the instrument cluster, because right now there's nothing in here. So we're going to do a little bit of cleanup first, but this is the original gauge cluster. I think the only gauge we're going to be using is the fuel gauge. We have these Autometer Sport Comp series gauges. We have a speedometer and a tachometer, and I went with these because I think they kind of look the best for the original style. I am going to try to paint that silver to black so it blends in better. I don't think I'm going to like it, but anyway, what we're going to end up doing is cutting holes in this plastic and setting those in there. We'll take this face cover off, and we'll probably have the speedometer right there and the tachometer right there, because yeah, like I said, the only one we're going to be using is the fuel gauge. The oil pressure, charging, and coolant temperature are not going to be hooked up, but we are going to be running a Cobb access port, and we'll have that set up to monitor those. And then also, with utilizing this factory gauge cluster, we'll have the turn signal and high beam and stuff like that. So we'll get to going on chopping that up. So I got this instrument cluster tore apart, speedometer and other gauges disassembled and over here in a pile, and we use these new gauges to trace out on this plastic what the hole is going to be. We could use a hole saw to cut this out, but with my luck on plastic, it just kind of rips up and tears things. So we're going to do old school method and use a coping saw and just slowly come out and go around, match up to the outside of those white lines there, and see how the stuff fits. And we'll have to also clearance stuff in here, speedometer and these other gauges. We got this circuit board thing on the back that we'll have to cut into and modify, because a lot of this stuff isn't going to be used, but we'll also still need to maintain some of these circuits. What we'll probably end up doing is just cutting this plug off of the Ranger harness and doing some hard wiring or something like that to whatever circuits we need, because I don't think we're going to actually be able to retain that molded plastic plug piece in there. So anyway, I'll get to cutting and fitting and see how it goes. So I got the instrument cluster finished up, painted the bezels black. For my personal taste, I wanted them to blend in better than this, the silver standing out. So we got the tachometer, speedometer, and fuel gauge right there. And we'll flip it around here, show you the back side. Not quite finished, but we got that metal bracing in there to secure it all. And then still need to put some plugs on this, but pretty much wired in for every single circuit that we're going to use that got eliminated from this plug. Got some wires on here, and we'll probably end up using some a Deutsch plug to plug into the dash, or well, the factory harness. This here will be separate because that is your check engine light, so that will tie into the Ecoboost harness. And then I think that's the turn signal. Anyway, main ground here, so we'll tie that in, and we'll also, now I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna have to modify these because we need to get to there in order to plug into stuff, so we'll have to notch those out to get clearance. Anyway, it's not that big deal, we'll get to it. Yeah, so gonna work on some wiring on this, and then probably the lighting's not very good, but this plug right here, gonna have to cut that off and splice in for what we want, because this one here is gonna plug into the other side that hasn't been disturbed. This one here doesn't have any place to plug in, and we'll have to put a plug on that to receive over here. And then also, sorry about that, but my GoPro battery died, so made a bit of progress while it was. Do you have something to say to the camera? No? So made a bit of progress while it was charging. Added a Deutsch connector onto this. And then I also tapped into the circuit board for the dash. The purple wire here is for the illumination on the gauges, so I just tapped into the other lights on the dash so it will dim with it. And then I tied into the ground circuit there. The two other circuits we need to do, well actually three, is we have the positive here and signal for the speedometer and signal for the tach. But I am waiting to figure out where I put my wiring diagram book for the Ranger, or not the Ranger, the Mustang. Because I got, I don't know, see if we can get a good view, probably not from in there, but here's a harness from the Mustang transmission, and I want to figure out which one is the speedometer signal, and then also the backup switch, because one thing I forgot, I didn't know about it, but on this plug here, on the previous the previous jumper wire we made, this plug has the switch for the backup reverse lights, and checked it out here in the Ranger harness. So we'll be tying two of these wires into that, and then two of the wires will go up into the dash, which might be a little bit hard to see right now, but added a connector there to mate up to the one on the dash. We have this wire here, which is hot on key on and cranking, so we'll use that to power the gauges. And we also pulled out this check engine light from, let's see here, the data port here. It had a bracket all made together there, but we're going to wire that into the instrument cluster so it looks the factory spot when that comes on. So we'll end up running those wires up behind the dash once we figure out what wires we need to run up for the speedometer signal. So I found my wire diagram book for the Mustang. This is a Ford book. I got this one on eBay. It wasn't too bad for a price, I think about 50 bucks, but it's used, works out pretty good for me. Searched through it quite a bit because this one isn't quite straightforward on where everything is, but found the section here that contains the speed sensor for the transmission, also reverse switch. I'll put a better photo in than what's on the camera now because the lighting kind of makes it weird. So what it looks like is we have a 3-wire speed sensor, which lines up pretty good with a wiring diagram from what is this? Autometer, yeah. And use their diagram on here. So we'll have a ground, a positive, and then a signal. And doesn't exactly label it out, but I'm going to assume that this reverse light circuit shares a common ground with the speed sensor. And then we have a power in and then a signal out. So the only problem with that is that our switch for the reverse light, we want it separate from this circuit here because we're not going to be running it back to an ECU with the common ground. We're just going to be passing through and using it just as a pass-through switch. So what that means is we're going to have to switch over the common ground on the speed sensor to something else. And we got several other wires to choose from. I'm thinking probably this extra black one here because the circuit also contains the oxygen sensor on the exhaust, so there's some extra wires we won't be using. So now I got to crawl underneath there and figure out where that black one is, and then I think the ground is going to be this brown with the blue in it. Yeah, so those are shared between the speed sensor and the reverse sensor. So what we'll end up doing is that'll just be for the reverse, and we'll use this black for the speed sensor. So I'll get this jacked up, crawl underneath, and see what I can find. So I got the instrument cluster all installed in there. Pretty happy with how it turned out. I got the bezel on and everything. Trying to get you some decent light in here without blinding. Anyway, I like how the black bezels look. They blend pretty well. Don't stand out too much. The gauges look like they fit the truck. I mean, you know they're not factory, but just at first glance, it's not really popping out at you. So that's it for this episode. Got more to come. Got a lot of little stuff to work on. Going to be doing some wiring, brakes, hooking up odds and ends of stuff. One of the other big things I'm kind of working on right now is a cooling package, but that'll kind of come along. So anyway, if you like this, go ahead and like and subscribe, and join us next time for more work on the Ranger.